Everybody, this is Perch. Here's a different question. I don't get questions like this very often, but here we go. Dear Perch, I have a question for you. I appreciate your show. My husband appreciates your show more, and he turned me on to listening to it. To be honest, I don't understand all the things you're talking about or regarding the comics industry, but it has helped me understand my husband's interests better. I have a question that is more of a relationship question. I don't know if you do those. Okay, anything, all comers here. Why not? Recently, I was going through my husband's back issue collection in long boxes. Hey, good for you. You know what a long box is. That's actually the way to go. We don't. Very few people call it long boxes. A lot of people come in when I had my shop. They would come in with these boxes, and they'd be long boxes. Like I got these crates full of comics. It always make me crazy. It's like that's not a crate. It's a long box. But anyway, that's very nerdy. Neither here nor there. Anyways, recently going long box to bag and board while he was at work, thinking it would be a nice thing for me to do for him. Yeah, that's good. It is a nice thing. However, as I was going through his comics, I couldn't help but notice that he had a large assortment of comics with inappropriate material. Comics where the characters were scantily clad or completely nude. I should mention my husband and I are Christians, and it made me very uncomfortable to see these comics in the collection. I didn't say anything for a couple weeks, but eventually I couldn't help it, and I finally asked my husband why he had these comics. He made the excuse. The fact that you're using the word excuse is leading me to a conclusion here. But anyway, he made this excuse that as a collector, he needs these comics, and even though he also doesn't agree with some of the content inside of them, he couldn't break his collection. I didn't like this and ultimately asked him if he would get rid of them or sell them. He promised he would. However, 3 months have passed and the comics are still there. I think he's hoping that I will just forget about them, but the problem is that I can't. I don't like the fact that we have these comics in our home, and I would be happier and more comfortable if they would go away. I am sure several of your listeners will call me a bitch or a shrew, but these are just my values, and I'm uncomfortable with these comics in our house. What do you think? What should I do? Or am I choosing the wrong hill to die on? Okay. As a general statement, by the way, and this is kind of broad advice, if you find yourself saying, this is my hill to die on, if you use those words, as my hill to die on, you're probably on the wrong hill to die on. I generally speaking, I think that those things are wrong. But look, okay, so you said scantily clad or nude, so I mean, I'm not sure what comics we're talking about, because there's a wide variety of, you could have superheroes in costumes in one of the, like hell, in a recent issue, Marvel comic issue, Exterminators, right? It's Boom Boom causes her boobs to explode, and there's just like explosions coming out of her boobs. I mean, sure, why not? There's that level, which is a Marvel comic, in theory for all ages, and then you have kind of erotica. You have stuff like Lady Death, kind of cheesecake erotica. Then you have Faust, and you have Cherry, and you have books like that. You have the Penthouse comics, and then you get all the way into hentai. I remember there was somebody came in and sold a bunch of books, and I was out of the store, and I come back, and I'm going through. It's like, yeah, we bought these books, we bought some manga, and I'm looking at this stuff, and there's a ton of incest porn that was in these manga books, and I'm like, ah, shit, I can't sell it. I mean, in that particular area where I was, like, I had no idea. Like, I don't have a market for this. I don't, or maybe I do. I just don't realize. But I'm like, how am I even gonna get the word out? Like, hey, if you wanted to see, kids have sex with their moms, well, I've got those comics. I've got them. Like, I don't know. Not a good plan. Anyway, so I don't know where you are in that barometer, and my answer kind of changes depending on where you are. If you've got a bunch of kind of that last category, then that's probably a little bit, that's going to change my answer versus, if you've got maybe some copies of Lady Death. But I think this is where I'm not qualified. I'm not a religious guy. I do have respect for religion. I definitely have respect for people who are religious, and so my answer is going to kind of fit into that category. Ultimately, you have to do what speaks to you and the relationship you have with your husband. I think you have to align it to the values that both of you have, and not whether you're suspicious or something. I mean, I'll say this, and maybe I'm wildly inaccurate here, but if the only thing your husband has are comics with some boobs in them, then I want to say count yourself lucky exactly, but you're in a different category from somebody who's maybe they're addicted to porn, or they're on OnlyFans or whatever it happens to be. I mean, there's different levels here, and if your husband could be correct. They're just collecting these comics. It could be that this is an outlet. Very common that when people get married, men and women for that matter, they feel like they need to retain one piece of individuality to not lose who they are. It's kind of a weird mentality, but maybe that's him. I don't know, but I think talking with him openly about it, I think if he said he'd get rid of them and then hasn't, then he clearly either is forgotten about it, which means it's not important, which means this entire thing is not really important. And in which case you shouldn't make it your hill to die on, because fundamentally it's not that important. Or he doesn't want to get rid of them, in which case you need to have a conversation. If this is really bothering you, I would never give the advice of just shut up and let it go, because that doesn't work. People are not good at just shut up and let it go. They're never able to. So if maybe there's a case he actually wants these, and he doesn't want to get rid of them, in which case you should have a conversation about that. But I mean, I would approach this from a standpoint of, is this the only thing in life? I mean, I want to say, first of all, good for you. You're taking an interest in what you have. I'm still impressed you're calling it a long box. Good for you. Bagging and boarding his shit while he's at work, I think that's nice. That's awesome. Good for you. It's showing an interest in him. I'm not going to call you a shrew or anything, because you're clearly trying to involve yourself in his hobby and everything else. You're seeing something that's in conflict with your religious beliefs, and maybe there's it's a newer relationship and you're just a little bit not secure yet in the what you guys have together. So I don't think I don't think it'd be fair or right to tell you just forget about it, or you're being a bitch, or any of that kind of stuff. I think the right answer is openness, to say, hey, these bother me. They bother me just having this stuff in our house. It goes against my religious beliefs. Hopefully, both of our religious beliefs. I heard you when you said that you were a collector, but I'm uncomfortable with it. Approach it that way, and don't approach it from the ultimatum perspective. If you go in with it's these comics or me. I mean, that's not a healthy relationship. That's not going to be good, and you will sound like a fool saying that out loud. Go in and just say, this is what I'm thinking. This is where I'm at, and I notice you haven't got rid of them. I may have jumped the gun. I mean, make it a little bit about like, hey, maybe I'm pushing you. Someplace you're not ready for, or maybe maybe this is something that you answered too quickly. You get rid of them, but you actually don't, and that's okay. So let's reapproach this. Maybe there's another solution here. Try something like that. Just try and get to the bottom of if this is truly bothering you. I'm taking you on the level for that. Again, I would say in the grand scheme of things, this one is probably not a big issue. Again, if you got a bunch of incest porn and stuff in there, you probably do have a different issue on your hands. But if it's just kind of TNA type comics, if that's the extent of your husband's kind of individual rebellion, you're in great shape. Bluntly, you're in great shape. So just try and approach it with empathy. Try and approach it from a this bothers me. Here's why, but I'm with you at solution. One thing that I will say, just to kind of wrap all this stuff up, that I maybe more listeners listening to this have experienced, is it's not uncommon for relationships to have a difference of opinion when it comes to comics. One person likes the comics, likes to collect, is spending all this money. It's taking up space around the house. It's a big pain, and it creates conflict between the other person in the relationship. And so people fight over comics. It's not uncommon. And one of the worst things you can do is come in there and say, get rid of all about your shit. This is our, we're living together, and this house space is shared house space. It's for both of us, and you can't have this kind of stuff. If you do that, you're sending a very clear message, to your spouse, that you are that you're trying to control kind of the things that are interesting to them, their hobby. You're trying to, and then in which case, why did you marry them? So I'm hooking off the fact that you say, you're trying to help out, you're bagging and boarding the comics, so you're clearly trying to make it work from that relationship standpoint, and you're trying to involve yourself in this hobby. You're just bothered because of your religious beliefs. You're bothered by some things you're seeing in that box, and I think it's worth a conversation. But please don't get too up in arms about he promised he'd get rid of them and he hasn't yet, because quite frankly, people are busy, and I can tell you just as just practical advice, taking comics in to go sell them or to offload them or put them on eBay or all the rest, it's not always easy. It's not like I'll just drop by the post office on the way home and just unload these comics. It can be a pain in the ass, and if you live a busy life and all the rest, it's it takes some commitment. And by the way, collector mentality. If somebody has spent a lot of time collecting these comics, it's kind of part of them. So you are asking your spouse to extract kind of something that they put love and energy into for a while. And so that's not just a casual afternoon mow the lawn kind of activity. So give them some space, see what you can do. Let me know. So I'm fascinated. I am fucking fascinated to see the comments on this one. I will definitely read the comments on this one. What do you think? Is this, what advice do you want to give for this? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.